Remembering Romeo Durscher. Got that coming up next. Bill the Drone Reviewer here. If you like the content of this video or anything on my channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. With that, let's begin. Last week, I was informed of the very sad news that Romeo Durscher had passed away. Romeo was probably one of, if not the best advocates of drones for good. He wore many hats and worked at many different places, most notably NASA and DJI. But his message was the same everywhere. He was one of the best proponents of drones for good out there, and drones in use in public safety today owe a lot to him. And I think a lot of the technology that we see that from drones being used for good was due to Romeo's influence. 2019, I had him on what was called Tuesday Night Rotor Talk Live at the time, and we had an incredible hour of discussing the projects he was working on, the future of drones in public safety, and just a whole incredible host of things. I'm going to publish the links to that broadcast out on Bill the Drone Reviewer Facebook group so you can access those. I'll make sure that we do that, and I'll also drop them in the description. But what I'm going to do is right after this, you're going to watch that broadcast in its entirety. I rewatched it recently, and it is just absolutely incredible. I'm sure you will enjoy Romeo, his take on things, the future for drones. Just he really was a great foreteller of things to come with us. So without any further ado, I'm going to roll that show in its entirety. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night Rotor Talk Live, Season 2, Episode 9. We have a very special guest on tonight, Romeo Durscher, who's DJI's Director of Public Safety Integration. I know you will all really very much look forward to it. I'm very anxious to get started here. Kind of wanted to greet everybody. Steve Carpenter, Floyd Moats, Bill Thomas, Arco, welcome tonight. Drone Master, David Ma, Peter Carroll. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. Like I said, this is just going to be just a great show. We're really looking forward to getting to know about Romeo and the fantastic work that he does with DJI. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Romeo. Romeo, welcome to the show tonight.
Well, Bill, thank you so much for having me, and hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm looking forward to having a chat and talking a little bit about what are we doing with drones in public safety.
Romeo, before you were with DJI, tell us about your background, what you did before you came to DJI.
Yeah. So, well, you may have detected an accent. So I was born and raised in Switzerland, but I moved over to the United States in '97 because I wanted to work on a space mission. That was like my childhood dream, to work on a space mission. And there's not much happening of that in Switzerland. Switzerland does watches and chocolate and does some banking stuff, but space is not really an area where Switzerland is thriving. And so I came over to the United States, and I had to work my way into all of it. But you may be able to see here in the background some of my space memorabilia. I ended up spending almost 13 years doing a couple of different things on various different space missions. Main focus was the NASA Solar Dynamics Observatory, which is a spacecraft, now a satellite, that is observing the sun and taking high-resolution images of the sun in different wavelengths, so we can see different layers of the sun and different temperatures. And technology has always been something that fascinated me. And of course, living here in Silicon Valley, you've got to be in tune with technology. So even during my time at NASA, I was already looking for other technologies and started playing around with drones. That was about 10 years ago. And so one thing led to the other.
Well, and that was that's a perfect segue to my next question. How did the opportunity at DJI come about?
Yeah, so my best friend, Mark Johnson, he has a company, Visual Laws, and they do forensic animation. And back in the days, 10 plus years ago, they had to go and rent a helicopter or get satellite imagery of, an area so that they could recreate an accident scene, train derailment, airplane crashes, you name it. And now suddenly this new technology emerged, and we're talking about, pre-Phantom 1 days, even at the time when DJI was not really a heavy hitter in this industry. And we realized that, hey, if we put a camera on one of these platforms, we can go and get imagery from, an area that we need to do investigation on, much simpler, easier, and faster. And so that kind of started our involvement in drones. And we started then also to utilize some of the DJI technology. Back in the days, it was the S800 series and the Flame Wheel. And then suddenly the Phantom was released. And we did some heavy testing on the Phantom side, and we started to make relationships with DJI. And so we got more involved in talking with teams over at the DJI offices. And at the time, it was really nothing like it is today. And DJI was a much smaller company as well. And so just by making all the relationships and showing the interest and learning about the technology and coming up with use cases, I kind of got myself more and more involved into all of it.
That's absolutely fascinating. And one of the things, because I've been following you for some time, and I see you're probably out of the office more than you're in the office. How does that work for you? I mean, are you how many days are you in the office? How many days are you out in the field?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. In the beginning, when I decided, okay, let me focus on public safety, because public safety I knew would be an area where you could immediately benefit from that live view. And so I had to spend a lot of time out in the field learning about public safety, learning about the needs of fire department, search and rescue, law enforcement, and really get an understanding of the ecosystem. And once I had a much better idea of what it is that they need, then of course I had to spend time with our teams on developing solutions. And my job is not really sitting behind the desk, although that's sometimes needed as well. It's really to be out there. I need to be working with these individuals, with these departments, to get a better understanding of how the technology is currently being used, what are the challenges, and what could the future look like, and take those lessons learned, bring them back internally to DJI for us to create some solutions, but to also go out into the ecosystem and find other third-party solution providers that can contribute to the grander things. Because for public safety, just having a drone, that just starts everything. There's so much more that has to happen, the integration into their operation, live streaming, data management, you name it. It's a much larger and more complex issue than what it looks like from the outside. So being out there is really a big advantage of DJI, to have that direct link into one of the verticals. And we're trying to establish something similar on other verticals too, because we started off being the manufacturer for these fantastic consumer drones that provided you as the operator with the ability to create art. And now we're trying to really provide technology that can change the way we are doing jobs. And so for that, we really have to be out there learning and taking that knowledge and developing solution towards.
Well, one of the things I know you must be really excited about the Mavic 2 Enterprise series, especially with the Dual just coming out. Were you involved with helping to come up with solutions, like the loudspeaker, the the strobe light, the camera, and then, obviously, the dual with the thermal imaging FLIR system. Were you involved with any of that?
Yes, absolutely. That was kind of like my baby, because very early on we learned about what are some of the things that public safety would need, and obviously, when you're an aerial photographer or videographer, you operate mostly during daylight. And so you want to capture the best light, you want to capture, the feeling of the sunrise or the sunset, whatever the case may be. But in public safety, this is a 24/7 operation. That means you have to operate in nighttime. That means you need to have a spotlight. And another thing that we realized very early on is the ability to establish communication is a huge benefit. So if we can send a message to the person that we just located after having been lost for days, just to let that person know, hey, we have eyes on you, stay put, help is on the way. Or if we can provide law enforcement with the ability to establish communication with a suspect, we're providing technology that can help these situations. And so what we're learning in the field, we're taking back to our R&D teams, we're discussing some of the ways that it could potentially be integrated, and then we validate it. Obviously, at the end of the day, it has to make sense. It has to be a solution that people need and will buy, because that's how the whole system grows. So we have to be smart about it. But the Mavic 2 Enterprise series is a fantastic example of what you can do with a small platform, because you have the flexibility of the accessories, from the speaker to the spotlight to the beacon, and you have the ability of utilizing either visible light or thermal camera technology. This is a tremendously powerful tool that public safety has been waiting for.
Well, the Mavic 2 Dual packs just incredible features in a Mavic sized drone with the FLIR imaging system. I had about a week with it. One of the drone companies, Florida Drone Supply, who I'm hooked up with here, they let me borrow and test it for a week, and it just blew me away, the capabilities of it. I mean, I didn't even really begin to scratch the surface of it. But one of the questions that came up that I had, and a lot of my viewers have had, is how close does that need to be away to detect a person? Like, how many feet? I mean, I hear a lot of things. I know what FLIR said on it. I'm interested in your take on that. What as far as that's concerned?
Yeah, so we have last March we announced the XT2 camera. That's the larger dual camera that goes on the Matrice 200 series. That is a much larger sensor, is much more powerful. So when we go from a camera that's quite a good size to something that's super small on a really small platform, obviously you have difference in quality. So the Mavic 2 Enterprise definitely has a smaller sensor, definitely has some limitations, and understanding those limitations is important. So I'll give you a good example. For example, let's say we're out in a search and rescue operation. The Mavic 2 Enterprise, if you're flying at 400 feet, you may not pick up the heat signatures or have the definition to say this is a person versus an animal. So knowing that means, okay, I'm not going to fly at 400 feet on a search and rescue operation. If you're able to fly at about 150 feet or lower, then you have a much higher chance of utilizing the sensor and getting data that can help you make either a find or a discovery. And we've seen that just a couple, 3 weeks ago here in Fremont, California, where Fremont Police Department used the Mavic 2 Dual to look for a missing student who was deaf. And they were able to spot the individual at night in the cold, sitting on the ground, or surrounded by bushes. So if you know how to utilize the technology, then you get an amazing benefit out of it. If you're flying outside of those parameters, then it becomes a little bit more challenging. So while the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual is a fantastic platform, it's not the one platform for 100% of the missions, but it's the easy, quick to deploy platform that you can get in the air fast, that you can go into smaller areas, even indoors, and already get a lot of data. And maybe in the meantime, the team is preparing the Matrice 210 with maybe a Z30 zoom camera as well as the XT2 camera, and use the larger sensors then for the search and rescue operation. Now, when we look at on the fighter side, let's say we're trying to detect the hotspots or the location of a hotspot in a structure fire. The Dual, the Mavic 2 Enterprise Dual, is perfectly fine for that, because you have such a high temperature difference that the sensor picks it up easily. So it really depends on what the mission profile is and understanding where the limitation of the technology is.
You know, I briefly had an opportunity to test the loudspeaker, the strobe, and the searchlight, and it was incredible. I was very much blown away by the loudspeaker. I thought, oh, how can this be loud? And I tested it, and my dog got shook up when I tested it. Is DJI, and I know you may not be able to answer this question, are we going to see more options for the Enterprise series?
Well, we're definitely always trying to find additional needs and then find or create solutions to meet those needs. And if there is a real need for something, we'll definitely look at it and see how can we provide an accessory or an attachment or an integrated solution that can meet that particular need. So that's one of the things I really appreciate about DJI. We have this incredible R&D workforce that can really quickly produce a solution. And so this was a first for the drone industry, to have a small drone that has dual camera and that has accessories. And when we announced it, I was watching all the different drone forums online, and it was very fascinating to see, because a lot of people didn't understand the value of what was just released. And there were a lot of interesting comments being made that, oh, DJI must be running out of ideas, when in reality it was that we were just announcing a product that just had never been seen before in such a small factor that people had to get used to it. And so now that we're seeing the immediate benefit of it, I think people are getting it more, that these small aircrafts are incredibly powerful, that can be used for most of the missions at hand. And if you need more or better data, then you scale up to a larger platform.
That's very interesting that you brought that up, because one of the things that I really liked about it right away was looking at the price point for the Dual. I mean, it enables a lot of your smaller communities that don't have the budget, say, of like where you live, like in San Jose, or outlying rural areas, to be able to afford a $3,000 drone versus a $30,000 drone like the Matrice.
Exactly, you're absolutely right. There is the price factor, and also when you start your drone program in public safety, my recommendation always is start small. Get a small platform or a few smaller platforms, get the experience, get some wins under your belt, and share those wins with city council, with your constituency, and then scale up. And so this was really the idea with this platform, that this is kind of like your entry drone into thermal imagery, but still have it so that you can do some very useful things with it.
And that kind of leads me into my next question is, I know you spend a lot of time with first responders, and you've written curriculum and have taught them. what is the number one thing that you try to get across to first responders who especially are probably new to drones or haven't had exposure to drones?
Yeah, so it's so interesting from having done the work here in the United States as well as in Europe. We have learned that there is no one integration model. So what works for one fire department, maybe the city right next to it may not be able to integrate it the same way. So it's very fluent. You have to find the best way to integrate the drone program. And then start small again. That was a big lesson learned too. There have been departments that immediately started with big drones, expensive drones, but they didn't have the experience and the knowledge on how to best utilize the technology. So it does take time to really establish a successful drone program. And then also the realization that not every incident uses a drone. That's also very important. Just to put a drone up in the air for the sake of having it up there, that doesn't help. We need to see the real value of it. And then what we also realize is that we're not only using the drone during a particular incident, we can use the drone before an incident happens. So for like inspection of levees, for example, or then post-incident for accident reconstruction, or what we did up in the wildfires, mapping out the destruction so that we have a whole view over an incident scene.
One of the things for me, as far as you sent today and a link to an article today that I'm going to put up on the screen here, if you can indulge me here for a second. One of the things that I think is just absolutely fantastic is DJI's work around the world. And, this article here, I'm going to get it up. There we go. Okay. Did drones help search and rescue teams find victims faster? New study shows. Search and rescue teams found simulated victims faster when they used drones for help, a new study released today finds. The study concludes that drones offer enormous potential to help search and rescue efforts, and rescue squads need to develop new standards, tactics, and protocols to take full advantage of the aerial's perspectives. I'm going to go ahead and I'll drop a link in the description, but Romeo, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about this article, especially from the standpoint, one of those numbers just really kind of jumps out at you. 160 lives were saved around the world.
Yeah, and that number now is over 200. But see, here's what we also learned. At some point, especially when we start going into like public safety, for example, we really need to have evidence-based claims. We can't just go in and say, hey, this drone will help save lives. Well, where's the data that backs up that this is really the case? And what we saw in the industry is that a lot of claims were being made. Drone saves money, drone saves time, drone saves lives, but there was no real data behind it. So I started trying to change that by doing some research studies with organizations that specialize in those type of studies. And we executed last summer a search and rescue trial study where we compared the impact of a drone-enabled search and rescue unit versus a traditional search and rescue unit without a drone. And we did 50 trial studies in Ireland and in Wales, and then compared the time to locate a victim with each other. And we did similar studies 2 years prior in Italy on top of a mountain to test drones in mountainous environments and mountain search and rescue. And we had done another study in Ireland earlier, and now we have these data sets that we can compare. And what we're seeing is that as technology evolves, as software evolves and becomes more impactful, and as we as humans get a better understanding on how to use this technology, we're shortening the time it takes to locate an individual by the help of drone. But here's one thing that we learned that is even more helpful than that. That is, we don't always have to find the missing person with the drone. If we know where the person is not, then we can reallocate resources on the ground to other areas. So for example, if the drone goes out and searches in an area that's dangerous or difficult for ground crews to get to, then we can save them potentially from harm, from having to go into that dangerous area, and we can reallocate those resources to other areas. And that's a very important learning that we've made, because it changes the way we look at the drone. So it's not just here to find that person, but it's here to reallocate resources, to help us make better decisions where to send ground teams versus where can we send drones, so we get the best of both worlds out of it.
And I know. No. I know you lead DJI's partnership with the European Emergency Number Association. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's just absolutely fascinating. And are we hopeful of trying to get something like that over here in North America?
Yeah, so ENA, the European Emergency Number Association, is in essence an organization that covers all the European EU member states to bring technology to enhance first response, to really help the everyday individual, knowing that the best technology is being used in public safety. And this is now the fifth year that we are doing this partnership. So I started very early on with the idea of, let's utilize this network to start learning about public safety and to start testing technology in the fire service, in search and rescue. And, about 4 years ago, the environment in Europe was much easier to do these kind of tests than it was here in the United States. That was pre-107. And so we decided, let's get ahead on in Europe to really start figuring out how this technology is being utilized in public safety. And then 107 came along here in the US, and we started doing some of the similar tests here. And it's been really successful. There's so much that we're able to learn through ENA, and they have now an integrated drone program where they look for other solution providers in the drone space and bring them all in and have discussions and brainstorming sessions, so that more and more technologies can be integrated. And ultimately that helps public safety, and that helps us, because if we are in distress, we know that public safety has better technology. It means that they can operate with less funds, so they can potentially lower the expense to a city. It keeps the public safety officials more safe, which again has a financial impact on a city, because they don't have to pay for injuries or even death. So all these little things start to add up and make a big difference, and that's the exciting part.
Question for you. I'm going to kind of wrap up this segment. We're going to get on to a next one here, but will we see any exciting things as far as the Enterprise series is concerned in 2019?
Well, we will be seeing lots of exciting things from DJI. Of course, I can't go into too many details, but rest assured that the team is working very hard on some additional solutions out there. And I think if we go back in time and look at what has been happening in the industry, we're also starting to see more focus on software, because it's not just the hardware that is so impactful, but it's also the software behind it that makes it so much more impactful, from fleet management to live streaming to stitching into orthomosaics. There are so many software components associated with drones today. And a lot of we're collecting so much data these days, not just by drone, by body-worn cameras, helmet cameras, dashboard cameras. This is a data-driven world, and if we can better utilize the data and take the pieces out of it that are important, so we can make better decisions, I think that's the key, a key step forward. So we will be seeing a lot of very cool things come out this year, both on hardware and software.
You know, I have to say this. When my wife and I went, it was my first event when we went to see the bigger picture in Brooklyn. And I have to say this, Romeo, DJI just welcomed us with open arms. It was a first-rate production, if you will. It was absolutely incredible what they did. How and I got a chance to I was able to meet quite a few folks, and just it was incredible, and it was incredible how all the guests were treated, and just from being able to not only see the drones, but we got permission, and somebody had to pull some strings, because as you can't fly really technically in the city of New York. We were able to take those drones up for test flights behind where the event occurred over in Brooklyn, and it was just absolutely fascinating. And I'm just very impressed with how DJI treated us that day.
I'm really glad to hear that, and we have an amazing team. Honestly, I couldn't do what I do without many other people from the events team, the marketing team, the sales team, the R&D teams. It's really a big production, and when we do these events, we want to bring the technology to the customers and have them experience it and make it a memorable event. And I think we're learning a lot in that, how to do that even better in the future. Because at the end of the day, especially on the consumer side, it's about the experience. It's about, what can you do with the technology? How do you interact with it? What do you get out of it? And that shapes your opinion on it. And so I'm really glad to hear that you had a good time.
One of the things, we're going to kind of switch gears here, and it kind of rears its ugly head. Unfortunately, it seems like about every week or so are these, I'll call them quote unquote incidents. The first thing that I wanted to ask you was, I'm sure you probably saw that study that was done by the University of Dayton, where they had, I believe it may have been a Phantom 2 or Phantom 3, strike the wing of a Mooney aircraft. And, I did a video on it. It's probably, I think I had the most comments I ever had on a video from that. But, all that aside, one of the things that I just found it just kind of blew my mind was they said it was shot at the wing at 200 miles an hour. And just, somebody even with high school physics can tell you, that drone's not going to be going at 200 miles an hour, number one. Number two, when, a private aircraft is up, it's probably up 2,000 or 3,000 feet. And, chances are real good drones aren't going to be up there. So what was your take on that?
Yeah, the good thing is that we're starting to see more and more research being done in all of this, not just what I was mentioning before on how to use the technology, but on also the impact technology can have. However, when you do research, you do have to ensure that it's done properly, and it's done in ways that are either already specified. In this case, there are test specifications that the FAA had released, or then are done in a way that reassemble reality. And I think the main point really was that the crash was beyond the maximum speed these aircrafts would hit at. That's number one. And way above the speed for a Mooney at that low altitude where drones would usually fly. So you have to take this study with a grain of salt. And of course, it also mentioned how birds have big impact as well, but there was never any footage shown of what the damage would look like from a bird. So while I do think it is important that we do these type of research studies, we have to also do them in ways that are meaningful, so that the results that we know what we're dealing with. Reality is that we have millions of drone flight hours on our platforms, and we have no confirmed data of fatalities due to drone and aircraft collisions. So it's a very safe technology that is out there, and we're trying to help not only educate customers and operators on how to properly use it, but we're also implementing solutions like geofencing so that our drones cannot operate in the vicinity of areas they're not supposed to be flying in. So all these steps are helping to keep this industry as safe as it is.
You know, one of the things every week we're seeing something about, what just happened over in Dublin, Ireland, and, Newark, New Jersey. There was an incident, and over at London, Gatwick. One of my questions for you is, the big thing is as you heard in the phrase in that movie, show me the money. Well, show me the drone. And, almost none of these, there's no video evidence. There's no photographic evidence. What can we do to help combat this spread of, I hate to use the term false news or fake news, but it's almost like even fear mongering. How can we, especially as like hobbyists and professional 107 pilots, combat this?
Well, exactly what we're doing here right now, Bill. I mean, we're talking about it. We're in an open forum. We're discussing. We're honestly giving our opinions and views and sharing that with each other, and that's part of education. So I think this is already a big step. What we're doing here, this whole drone industry has really bloomed, and with technology, and we have seen that throughout history, something is invented for one purpose, for a good purpose, and then maybe used also to hurt others. And so we're seeing now the rise of drone detection and mitigation solutions. And even at DJI, we have solution like Aeroscope, where we detect our own drones and provide real-time information on where the drone is, and that is extremely helpful. We used it, for example, during our wildfire deployments, not only to keep track of our own drones because we're flying in close proximity of each other, but also to make sure that nobody without authorization is flying in the TFR, in the temporary flight restriction zone. And so with more technology, with more understanding, with better discussions, I think we as a society will overcome all of this. So I'm really happy to have these discussions, and I know our policy team with Brendan Schulman, they're constantly out there in front of lawmakers, providing real information and real data and real solutions to what sometimes is perceived to be a much, much larger issue. I'm not saying there is no issue. We clearly have individuals that, for whatever reason, maybe they don't know it's not a good idea, maybe they just want to be cool or take a cool photo of an airplane, do things that they're not supposed to be doing. So we will always have that. We will never get 100% compliance, but if we can reduce it to a minimum amount, I think we're doing a fantastic job, which is, in my opinion, evident by the fact that we haven't had any large incidents.
I know from some information you sent me, you've done some things going around the world. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with ABC Good Morning America over in Vietnam?
That was an amazing project, Bill. ABC Good Morning America had this segment of showing some of the most beautiful areas around the world from a different perspective. And we went to Son Doong, which is the world's largest cave system in the middle of central Vietnam. And we spent a lot of time in the cave, not only flying the drones, but also figuring out technology. How can we get a live video stream from an Inspire 1 or a Phantom 3 and transmit it out of the cave to the satellite dish, then to the studio in New York so everybody can see it live. I mean, that's an amazing task to do. And we did it successfully, and it was just amazing to be in this beautiful cave that has its own weather pattern, that in one area has a jungle inside the cave, just the most spectacular place you can imagine. And the people were extremely proud to showcase their country, their beauty. And after the project, after we came out of the cave and went back to Hanoi, we were celebrated like heroes, and it was amazing. It was such a wonderful experience, and something that I think back quite often.
You know, I'm a big fan of the hashtag Drones for Good, and I know you are as well. And one of the other things that you sent me a link was a United Nations project in the Maldives. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yes, so it's, coming from my NASA background, I truly believe we are experiencing a global climate change, and weather patterns are changing. And the Maldives, they have about 1,300 islands that are roughly 4 feet above sea level. So a rise in sea level directly impacts those islands. And so what we went out there doing with the United Nations Development Program was to see how could drones help, not only on measuring the impact of climate change, but then also if there is an emergency, if there is flooding, how would the emergency services utilize the technology in those environments. And it was very beautiful to go there. It's such a beautiful ecosystem. But seeing these islands that are 4 feet above sea level, and seeing all the homes, and hearing the stories of more and more floods are coming and destroying their land, their homes, it is scary. It is scary, and the forecast is that within the next 30 to 50 years, the majority of those islands will be gone. And so we're trying to help with drone technology in mapping out those areas, creating digital map. Some islands, most of the islands, they only had paper maps or hand-drawn maps of. So by utilizing drones, by doing photogrammetry, we can create these high resolution and very accurate digital maps for emergency response operations, and to compare the impact of climate change.
One of the other things that I really wanted to ask you was, I can imagine from having followed you on Twitter for some time now, what typical days are like. Have you ever, were doing something and then right in the middle of it, just dropped what you were doing to go assist with some first responders, because I know there's been a lot of wildfires out in California. Have you done anything like that?
Yes. I've helped on 3 of the large wildfires, from the one in Santa Rosa, the Tubbs fire in October 2017, to the Carr fire in Redding in August 18, and then the big campfire in Paradise in November 2018. We deployed with 16 public safety UAV teams, and we assisted on a variety of different missions, including mapping out the entire town of Paradise, 17,000 acres. We did over 500 mapping flights, and then with help of Drone Deploy, we dumped all their data. We drove hard drives down to their offices, put it right on their servers. They did their magic, and within less than 48 hours, we had these high-resolution maps available for not only the public to see what their communities, what their homes look like, but for emergency personnel, for insurances, for city planning. So tremendous impact. But then also on local events, when we had flooding here in the Bay Area, or when there is a search and rescue operation, I oftentimes get called out to assist and provide my knowledge. And for us, this is really helpful because we can see what works in the field, what doesn't work, where can we improve, and have firsthand experience in those operations.
Going to kind of put you on the spot here for a second. What's your favorite DJI commercial drone and why?
That's a good question. One of my favorites still is the Inspire One, because it is a workhorse. And when the Inspire One was released in November 2014, it was something that we hadn't seen before. We had this really cool looking drone that was transforming in midair. It was very futuristic looking. But at the same time, we also announced the SDK, that we opened up our SDK to software developers so that they could write software and apps that work on our drones, like Drone Deploy and Pix4D. And I think that combination changed the drone industry. So we also used the Inspire One in the cave. So I have a very fond memory of this platform, and I fly it quite frequently. But I also have to tell you, I love the Mavic Air, and I love the Mavic 2 with the Hasselblad 1-inch sensor, because I do a lot of aerial photography, and that Hasselblad 1-inch sensor is a beauty.
So obviously you do keep up on DJI on the commercial side of things as well then.
Absolutely, because a lot of the features that are on the consumer side can also be used on the enterprise side. So yes, it's important to keep up on what's happening in that field as well.
One of the things that everybody who's watched me for some time knows, one of my phrases, and I don't know if people get tired of hearing it or not, but DJI does not waste technology. What you've talked, how you just talked about the Inspire, things, it's a trickle down effect. I mean, you end up seeing things like the Mavic 2 Pro. After I got it and started to fly it, it just blew me away with the technology was in that. I upgraded from a Mavic Pro to that. It just, and I think that's one of the best things that DJI does is, there's no such thing as wasted technology. They incorporate things that, we'll eventually see things, from technology that they use, like in the Matrice series, will come down eventually into the consumer realm as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see all of this. I compare it to, the capabilities of the iPhone. The original iPhone, was a game changer, but we didn't really understand how big of a game changer. But then, things started to really evolve, and now we have a mini computer in our hands, and that's true for the drones as well. It's incredible to think the amount of computing power and sensors that are integrated on these small platforms, and all the helpful features that they provide to us as operators. The future will be a lot of fun, I can tell you that.
Well, I was going to say, 5 years ago, where we were in drones and where we are today is incredible. Where do you see DJI especially going in 5 years? I mean, is this, we're just, every year it just blows me away with what they do, with what they come out with the technology. Where do you see, not only DJI, but the drone industry in 5 years?
I wish I would have known that 5 years ago already where we are today. It's hard to predict, but one thing is clear. Drones are here to stay. And drones are not going to replace jobs. They're going to enhance jobs. They're going to change the way we do certain tasks. They're going to make jobs more safe and more effective. But it also means we're creating more and more data. And so we need to keep up with the data. We need to find ways to get the important information out of the data, actionable data. So that opens up other opportunities for other industries. So I really foresee this ecosystem to continue to grow. we will learn more about how we can integrate drone into more everyday tasks, from power line inspection, utility inspection, to bridge inspection, and new sensors and more sensors, more accuracy, and then everything boils back down to the data. So on the hardware side, DJI will continue to be innovative, to provide not only the consumers with more capabilities, but enterprise users with ways of using drones that today we're not even thinking about. And it will also provide opportunities for academia to do different kind of research, to educate and inspire the next generation of innovators and engineers. So I think the entire ecosystem is extremely powerful.
I'm going to put you on the spot as far as the consumer drones. I asked you about, you answered the Inspire 1, but as far as consumer drones, I know you said the Mavic Air, the Mavic 2 Pro. What's your favorite DJI consumer drone and why?
Well, it probably is the Mavic 2 Pro at this point, because of the portability factor, the lens, the sensor on the camera. You can do some amazing things with it, but it also is a drone that's super easy to fly. It has the sensors to help you. It has the features in the app to do a lot of really cool things like panoramas. It stitches it together autonomously. You can do spheres. So a lot of autonomous functionalities are built into a very small platform at a very good cost.
Well, I have to say, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight, Romeo. You really gave us I wanted to try to cover a lot of topics in a short amount of time. I think I did pretty good with that. You gave us a real good flavor for, what you do with DJI, for, public safety, for the efforts using the Mavic 2 Enterprise series, also with your partnership with the agency over in Europe, and hopefully trying to get something like this started here in North America as well, and also plugged in with DJI in terms of being able to help them come up with solutions that will benefit all of us. As you said, those numbers are going up with lives that have been saved by drones, and one more day for somebody on this earth is priceless, and drones have given that to over 200 people, as you said. So I want to thank you so much for your time. I would absolutely love to have you on again sometime in the future. Hopefully you're open to that.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me, Bill. And thanks to everyone who joined us tonight. If they have any questions, I'm sure you have a way of facilitating, but I try to be as accessible as possible, because I not only believe in this technology, I'm passionate about it. And if there are questions, if people do want to, talk further about it or need more information, don't hesitate to reach out. Even though I'm on travel a lot, I always try to maintain that openness so that we can have these type of conversations.
I'm going to drop links in the description. Romeo's on Instagram, he's on Twitter, and I'm going to drop links to articles and what we've talked about tonight that he's mentioned. And so you can definitely check him out and engage him in Twitter and in Instagram. Romeo's been great and very responsive. I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight, for what a great audience you were. I saw that as the chat was going on, lots of great comments. Thank you for that. Can't thank you guys enough for the support that you've given to the channel, and for everything that you do, because you help drive me to make great content. You help me to get great guests like we had on tonight with Romeo. Just can't thank you guys enough. We have some, more things coming up the rest of this month of March, so stay tuned for those. We have Sunday afternoon Rotor Talk Live coming up, and I'm going to be getting some guests from overseas to join us as well. We had Gail on, but we're going to have some other ones. So look forward to that. Again, thank everybody so much. And remember, it's a great day to fly. Take care, everybody.